Second, and this, we need to fundamentally understand that if we don't change our processes, that the world won't, that whatever we do will not give us the result we want. So if we are providing sellers with comp plans and structures that motivate them to sell on behalf of the seller and not act on behalf of the buyer,
GTM AI podcast with Jonathan Moss and Coach K, where you get the latest with AI and GTM today.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the GTM and AI pod, where we talk shop with industry experts, thought leaders, and operators about go-to-market and AI. One quick note, we recently were rated one of the top business pods in the US, so thank you to all of our loyal listeners. Today is a special episode for me, at least, because I have someone that I've admired for a very long time. I've done all the revenue architecture, all of his writings, and followed him for a very long time. And I got to meet him a few years ago. So let's get started with a little introduction for those that you have maybe been living under a rock and don't know about Jacco. Jacco is an internationally renowned business leader and thought leader of really revenue growth and strategy. He founded Winning by Design, which is a B2B revenue consulting and training company, helping people like Uber Eats, DocuSign, and others. He also wrote a very amazing book that I follow and have followed in many different organizations called Revenue Architecture, which really talks about SaaS model, how to build a durable revenue machine, or what he calls a revenue factory, in any sort of reoccurring revenue business. He's a keynote speaker, been things like SaaS Stock, Dreamforce, etc. And he's from a small town, a small village in the Netherlands. And I think you're the youngest of 8, I believe. And you've done things like compete in chess, boxing, selling, and 2 world champions. Dude, is there anything you haven't done, Jacco? Is there anything you haven't done in life?
Yeah, it's not about what you've done, what you've done well. And I can tell you, if you go boxing and you're not good at it, that's not a good sport to be good at, okay? And to be fair, it was full contact Muay Thai fighting for 5 years. So if you see why is that nose so crooked and why are those eyes, double tap on both. Anyway, it's all. Yeah, don't be not good at a sport that the physical damage of that is associated. But let's talk shop.
Let's talk shop. All right, here we go. So let's set the stage. So go-to-market is experiencing some fundamental shifts over the past 5 years. First, there was a zero interest rate era where growth at all cost mentality came in. Then we quickly shift without much warning into profitable, efficient growth. Then while we're still getting our footing, because we're still not, most companies aren't there yet, we sprinkled a little of this kind of thing of the once in a decade, maybe lifetime technology platform shift called AI. Not really sure if you've heard about it, but it's this thing that's happening today. So what we're going to unpack really is around what happens when AI takes the wheel and go to market.
Okay. So I think that to start off with, what you're saying is it's not accurate. It's accurate, but there's a problem in there. Yeah, okay. And it starts off at the beginning. And the beginning you said is like, hey, without a little warning. This whole thing, that's not the case. This warning from the AI, from the crash, actually was long there before. Whether it was 6 months ago, it was announced throughout that it was about to crash, and that's the summer of 2021. But I can tell you that Winning by Design, if you look up the term Jacco and Prezi, P-R-E-Z-I, you're going to get a Prezi from 2012. Well, I already highlight the outline of what has happened. It just took a decade, right? And we threw oil on the fire. So that's one. Second, in that decade, we all participated, my friends included, Winning by Design included. We benefited financially from the growth at all mindset, right? Growth at all cost mindset. And so that mindset is what caused it. I want you to understand that AI, as we talk about it in a second, and that crash, essentially have operated independently, and today still is. And whether that is good or bad, we can discuss that. Like that, AI has nothing to do with the crash, and for today, yet seems to have little to do with the recovery. Okay, and I want you to think about that, because that is a major spike. That is what? Now, whether it will make it part of the recovery, you and I believe that it will. But that's not necessarily everybody's mindset these days, right? Because if that would be the case, then you should have 1 million listeners to this podcast right now, because I'm telling you, this problem is so widespread. Anyway, a lot to go off, a lot of meat on that bone. So let's start.
Yeah, no, that's a great view. And you're exactly right. We do think it, but ultimately we're not seeing it. So let's talk a little bit about this concept of shifting to AI-led growth and what actually that means. So one of the things you've talked about is around the go-to-market landscape, moving from traditional inbound and outbound models into AI-led. Not just AI is just not another tool. It's really transforming how customers and businesses scale. And there's three kind of models that you've talked about. Product-led growth, which we know about. This has been around, self-service buying. Human-led growth, your traditional sales model. And then this kind of new concept of AI-led growth. So I want to unpack a little bit about that. So AI-led growth is more than just automation. So what really is the deeper transformation that's happening right now?
Okay. So the deeper transformation is what gives rise to these three. If you go back to the 1960s, you look at factory designs, and as you said in the intro, I'm quite interested in that. And by the way, the CEO's podcast, Microsoft CEO podcast with D3, or what is it, the DG2, he announced that about 52 minutes in, he said the same thing. He said, the real key of all the success is looking at your revenue growth as a factory, right? Everybody picks up SaaS as that, says it's not that. Let's BS. What is happening is that we need to see that once you go beyond a certain milestone in revenue, now we can argue whether it's 10 million, 20 million, or 50 million, but your business starts to operate like a factory, whether you like it or not, whether you like the term or not, whether you have things of whatever you picture is of a factory. That's not what probably what I mean with it is it starts to produce something repetitively. Efficiency is an important factor. And quality is of the utmost interest in order to keep the production up, the production of the quality, okay? That's the mindset here. Now, the mindset for us, quality and our RGR, easy enough. Efficiency, the work by David Spitz, GTM efficiency. How many dollars does it take to acquire a dollar of growth, right? And growth comes from three sources: acquisition, retention, and expansion. And then, like production, what am I producing? I'm producing all that growth. Okay, mindset, level set. That factory historically runs on three elements: processes, systems, and people. Those three can be translated. People-centric growth, as we have historically done, the reason why we needed that, as you and I have spoken about in the past, is what we notice in the world that you and I live in. That is not true for everybody in the world, but in the world that you and I live in, our companies need exponential growth. Why? Because when a company starts in our world, they don't have funding, and they may get the first seed round funding. And when you get seed round funding, you're going to be valued at a couple of $1 million. And then lo and behold, within 5 to 10 years, these are $1 billion assets. Now, how $1 million asset becomes $1 billion asset is through exponential growth. You won't do that with 10% year over year increase. You need like triple, double, and then you become $1 billion. In order, and this is the whole fundamental problem, this is where HLG, AILG, and PLG all comes from. In order to create that exponential growth, historically, we used human beings. And human beings, if I need to dig a hole twice as big in the same amount of time with a shovel, I need twice as many people. If I need to dig a hole 4 times as big and need to do that then I need 4 times as many people. But because those 4 people start talking to each other, I probably need 5 times as many people, because we're going to get some human, whatever, what do you call it? The diminishing return of
Returns.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So in order to get that exponential growth doing, what did we historically do? We hired exponentially the amount of people. We added the exponential growth. Look, if you walk into San Francisco, and you don't have to walk it. If you drive up to San Francisco, you see this gigantic tower called Salesforce Tower. Every floor, you can look at it. You can look up the original designs, and you look what was the premise behind it. The premise behind it was it would be floors filled with SDRs, AEs, and CSMs. Floors full of them, because we wanted to create that exponential growth. Jonathan, if you want to know the truth, they even built an entire transportation terminal for that.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
What? Multi-billion dollars, because all these young people would come from outside of the city. They would come by public transport, arrive at the transportation terminal, would walk into the Salesforce towers where they would do. And that would be the headquarter of SaaS of the world, right? That's the big thinking down here. That is multi-billion dollars of investment to create this exponential growth curve. Okay. The problem is people are costly.
Yes, they are.
Okay. Now, what we learned from PLG is that when we scale on systems and executing proven processes, we can also create that exponential curve. And that exponential curve that we are created based on systems executing processes is that essentially comes at a fraction of the cost. Now, meanwhile, AILG, the human-led growth, is still super expensive, but if your ACV is high enough, you can, like, your LTV is long enough and your expansion in the meantime is big enough, then you may be able to very well afford it, right? And that in generally historically pointed to a $10,000, $20,000 ACV price. You could afford that. Today, because the price of acquisition and the win rate is so low, yeah, you probably need to look at $50,000 and above before we can start looking at human-led growth. Maybe 35, dependent on, maybe you hire people cheap, I don't know, but it's not $10,000. And so that whole SDR AE segment that we used to call on, right, that was set somewhere between 5K at the low end in 2000, 12, 13, 14, what Mark Cossaglow talks a lot about, right? Like that's where he got his roots from, right? That whole segment, all the way up to 25, 30K, which was the ERP and like the CRM platforms, that whole segment suddenly is unattainable to be sold by human-led growth. And to expect that to be fully self-sustained PLG, that is unlikely. So that's where we now see, lo and behold, AI-led growth comes in there. It will not replace the human-led growth in its entirety, but it will augment it enough that the cost of the acquisition drops. That's the scheme of it all, right? And then we'll use the systems-based approach, the executing processes, more at the front end where it's more expensive. And then as it more and more it comes to completion, then we see human-led growth take over. That whole thing, that is what we're in the middle of trying to find out as a group right now.
Yeah, and it makes a ton of sense because what you're really talking about is really the go-to-market efficiency. Talk a little bit about that in regards to what that is. It's the cost of acquiring new revenue, and it's really spiraled out of control. In fact, the last I think we saw, it's over $2 of spend for every $1 of revenue at the moment. And what we're seeing in the market, and thanks to Spitz and Bench Insights, you're seeing that SaaS growth has actually been cut in half since 2021. And NRR is actually was down 7 points last year, is down another 4 points this year. So that's 11 percentage points. And so it's being harder and harder to grow, and it's more costly. And so one of the things that you're talking about here is finding the right spots to put AI and replacing people, but then also using AI to augment as well. And I think there's two approaches to that, and would love, so thinking about the first one. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're fantastically well put. Thank you very much for saying you're a great host. So why did the growth drop? Because the growth didn't drop because the cost went up. Growth dropped. Growth already started dropping, right? Like, why did it?
Yeah.
Look, the cost is important, but it's not the most important thing. I think that now the cost, like $6, several companies are acquiring $1 of net revenue at $6. That's a problem. Don't get me wrong. That's a problem. But at $2, it won't be that much of a problem. Many people in 20, 30, $40 million will be fine. Look, at $0 million, your acquisition cost versus the revenue you gain is infinite, right? So you're going from down. The question just is how does that curve follow, and when does it go down? Now, historically, that growth was kept up by a lot of people buying growth. But why did the growth drop? Do you know? Do you have an idea about that? I'm not saying I have the idea, so don't think that I'm going to come in with a fantastic answer. But
no, I just think that ultimately growth dropped. One was there was a lot of money out. People were just able with budgets to buy, number one. And I think they got to a point to where actually what you hear more about is the tech bloat of things that are happening. If you think about SaaS in general, where every company I go into, they have so many tools. Those tools are not well adopted and they're not well integrated. And so I think you have this kind of combination of two factors. One is there's less money to spend from companies, going to your point of growth is starting to drop and budgets are being scrutinized. But also you have this situation to where there's so much tech out there that most people are looking to consolidate more so than continue to buy, because the ROI or the productivity gains and enhancements that people were selling on the value of didn't come true. So they didn't get that impact, or they weren't continuing to get the reoccurring impact that is truly what you buy a technology or SaaS. So I think that was part of it. I don't know that was all part of it, but I think that was a big part of it.
Okay. Do you remember that they always have these different fitness rages, right? And do you remember the one that was obviously we have the one with Taibo was one that
But was it Billy Blanks? Was it Billy Blanks? Something like that?
But then there was this fitness rage with the step. Remember you had the step, a little thing that you need to step on, and then that was this thing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And do people want to stay fit? Of course they want to stay fit, but there's something new coming in every now and then. The other day, I say this is my wife and I were driving somewhere, and we see that there's somebody with a caravan or a van or something like that. And in order to step into the van, they use this little step and we go, man, we haven't seen that in a while. And I'm sitting there and I'm coming to think about it. And I go, you know what? That is a reapplication of something we are the same thing. I think that what we had is the inflation was due to several things. One of them was the following. We sold to each other. So when we had only 10,000 companies and we turned it into a 40,000 company, we 4x the market. Right? So anybody selling to other SaaS companies? Okay. 2 is, we created SaaS companies, and you can look it up based on the tweet. Every tab in the spreadsheet should be an application, right? So we created all kinds of SaaS apps that shouldn't have been SaaS apps, right? And they shouldn't have been funded and blah, blah, blah. So there's going to be a washout of that. Fine. Like normal. We overproduced. Get used to it.
Yeah.
But then we also had a large amount of customers who simply never achieved impact with their CRM, with their ERP, with their extra application. They simply never achieved the impact that they wanted. And as a result, these companies, like that bench that stands in front of the thing, they dragged it out of the attic or they pushed it into the attic. Hopefully in the future, they drag it back out. But they didn't achieve impact. What I can tell you, and that is the truth, fortunately, there's still a lot of customers who actually need product. There's still a lot of customers who need something right now, but those customers will not respond to your 50th email that you're sending them and to your LinkedIn message. Hey, we want to be friends and we have mutual. That is over. And I'll give you another example. The other day at 8:00 at night, there's 2 young people at my door trying to sell me something. And I go, yeah, of course I'm a sales professional. Like, I'm not going to listen to a sales pitch at the door any longer. Those things are
no. Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, like I had bad experience in the past of it. So email is out, LinkedIn is out, a door selling is out. So Jonathan, I have the following question for you.
What's that?
Look, I don't want to know what AI replaces. I know what AI replaces. I want to know, what will AI not replace?
I think that's a great question. And I think that, and I'll take the first shot at it, but would love to hear your thoughts too, because the question is like, if inbound is out, outbound is out, door to door is out, what's left? The sales doomed. And I think that ultimately the way that I look at it is it can't replace those relationships. It can't replace the in real life, getting to know someone, doing those types of things. What I do think it can replace and will replace is a lot of the process of the buyer friction that we've put in. We've optimized the sales process and engineered it so much for the seller and not the buyer because we didn't think about that. And so from that perspective of what it will not replace, I think the thing that's really left is to know me. How can I build a relationship and how can I understand the things that, you're wanting to do, you're wanting to buy? AI is going to assist me with all of those things, but I still think there's some relationship element. But beyond that, I'm not really sure. So I'll turn it back to you. What do you think that it will not replace?
I think that what will not, I think that we today have a lot of misperception and misunderstanding what the buyer-seller relationship really is.
I agree.
And I don't believe that buyers want friends and trust and stuff like that. So I'll give you one thing. I think that brand is going to be way more important.
I agree with that too.
So I think that, and this idea of trust, I want a relationship of human being I trust. There's an element to that. I get that. And that element takes, obviously, when you buy a $250,000 or $500,000 piece of software, guaranteed and above, right? Guaranteed.
That's right. That's right.
But if I'm buying a $20,000 piece of software for you with a monthly subscription and a guarantee, and a monthly payment or something like that, go further, go usage payment, Dude, what the trust is in the brand and in the product, not in the seller.
That's right. That's right.
So second, and this, we need to fundamentally understand that if we don't change our processes, that the world won't, that whatever we do will not give us the result we want. So if we are providing sellers with comp plans and structures that motivate them to sell on behalf of the seller and not act on behalf of the buyer, yeah, look, I've grown up on sales comp plans, right? As I often say, as a child being number 8, I'm born from a spiff following World War II and a government-funded repopulation. So I'm born from a spiff. So don't get me wrong, but I get that. Like at the same time, is having people motivated by selling you something is financially, with a financial gain, is ill-suited. AI is not motivated in that way, right? And so you're going to see that buying experience is going to change. So trust of a brand is one. Number 2, I think that I can tell you a few things that I know for sure. One thing, in order to grow, we're going to need, every company in our world, we're going to need to continue growth. Growth is a guarantee. It's not, oh, we don't need to grow, it will be fine. No, we need growth, number 1. Number 2, growth comes from customers. Okay, that means that you can raise all the funds you want, but that won't get you growth. Eventually you need customers, and that needs to, so growth is number 1. Number 2, that is true, is customers. Number 3, customers need to be happy. We won't be able to grow this machine if the customers are not happy, right? So that's imagine that. Happy customers is how we're going to grow. That's our fundamental truth. Number 2, in order to achieve that in a repeatable way, we're going to be based on systems, processes, and people. We know that for sure, whether we do it today, next year, 10, 15 years from now. Okay, so we know that. All that, 100% truth. So if we start to work on that, then all we need to do is the next thing. Most likely, when you grow, you can't buy a customer that brings you $1 at $10. So as you grow, that $10 needs to become to 5, 2, 1, not 80 cents, 90 cents, and so on. What it ultimately will come down to, and it tells us a lot of where the future is going, it comes down to, at the average lifetime of your customer, call it 5 years for ease of understanding. For most platforms, it's 5 years. For most applications, it's between 1 and 2 years. And for most plugins on a web browser, it could be like a month, right? To anywhere from. But what we are going to see is that standard GAAP compliance-like thinking that over the lifetime of the customer, in this case 5 years, you cannot exceed 20 to 22% of the total lifetime value. It cannot be spent more on marketing, sales and marketing cost. Meaning that if a customer brings me in $20,000 a year and you do a little bit of growth, and that brings you approximately to $120,000 over a 5 years of time frame, that you cannot exceed somewhere between $20 and $30,000 in cost of acquisition that customer. Otherwise, the metrics won't end up. No. That brings us to a whole new mindset. Today, we run LTV as an open end. We say it's 1 minus NRR, stupid stuff. Like, look, how long do you have an iPhone?
I do. Yep, sure do.
How old is it?
It's the 14 Pro Max, so 2 generations behind.
2 generations behind. Now, you know that, like, essentially the economic lifetime of that thing is written off in 2 years, right?
2 years. Yep.
Okay.
That's why the telecom companies will let you do the whole like leasing thing. Yes. So
the point that you're making there, like you have it more than 2 years, right?
I have, yeah. I have had it more than 2 years now.
Okay. So your horizon on that phone is 2 years, but you may have it 4 years. But the horizon on that phone, the technical horizon that phone is designed for, is 2 years.
2 years.
So you extended that to 4, but you can't build a business on that.
No.
Okay.
That's right.
Same thing here. If our customer is using a 7 or 8 year, that is fantastic. But we need an economic horizon that we build a stable business on. We need to say, hey, if you're selling a platform, a CRM, an ERP, an applicant tracking, whatever it is, your horizon on that is 5 years. If I buy a TV, it's 5 years. If I buy a computer, it is 3 years. If I buy a phone, it's 2 years. I am literally, every time I'm doing this, I'm establishing an economic horizon. I said within this time frame. We need to do the same thing in SaaS. And then we need to manage the business, whether we're using lower cost processes and systems through AI-led growth, or more expensive human-led growth, which may drive because the expansion is bigger on that, right? But we need to say, over that economic horizon, 5 years, 3 years, whatever you come up with, cost of sales and marketing and customer success, expansion that is, cannot exceed the economic horizon of 20%. Like then we're running a fort. Now, that level of thinking is already starting to take place. That's CFO level thinking. And one of the big takeaways I want to bring with you today is, what if RevOps is leveled up to FP&A? What suddenly if RevOps becomes FP&A of par right now? Why? Because people trust FP&A because those are certified accountants who perform that in general, right? They are certified.
That's right.
And today, what we still run this on, many of our businesses run on a few cool kids who know how to use tools, and kids, if I'm referring to not age, but referring to the coolness factor.
Yep.
And they're running it with an intent to grow the company with some new cool, the growth hacking, right? And we go, yeah, that's cool when you're $10-20 million. But if you operated $480 million and you just went IPO, that seems to be a little odd. I'm not saying you should one of them. I'm just saying is you probably should counter that with a team of 4 or 5 FP&As, financial planning and accounting, who balance that out. That's the world we're living in. To give you an idea, we have 1,282 unicorns we're keeping track of. 1,282. Okay. At this current rate, we're looking at about 20 to 30 going IPO at best in the 9-18 months.
That's a big backlog.
Big backlog. And so there's not going to be room for a lot of them. And that means a lot of PE takes about 4 years, has a lifetime value of 4 to 5 years after they have to ditch those. So we're going to see a lot of M&A over there. Like NRR is not, I predicted that the NRR would come down about 2 years ago and wrote a paper on that. That has now happened, right? That is happening, but it's balancing out. Get ready. Funding won't be there. And so M&A activity, mergers, acquisition, we are entering the season for the next 18 months. We're going to get lots of like companies merge and acquire and whatnot.
Agreed.
They're all going to look like they were fantastic. And they're all behind the scenes. It is disastrous metrics that nobody wants to talk about. But on LinkedIn, it shows, anyway, on LinkedIn, it will show them.
Yeah. So a couple of things you just chatted about, and I want to get your perspective on this and happy to also share. So you're talking about the economic horizon. You've talked about that we still need products, but some products will consolidate. Talked about the backlog but now what happens in the world of AI agents? And so I think in this world, and so let me frame this a little bit. So traditional software, it has been built with a business logic or logic, think of a CRM, where I actually have to do all the work. I have to go in, I have to fill out forms, I have to click buttons, I have to do drop downs, I have to do all this stuff, right? And it's really caused almost similar to what a EHR has done for a doctor. It's really caused sellers or people to be less productive because they spend more time in administration or other things. In the world of AI agents, where the agent can actually use the software on behalf of me, or actually do I even need that software if I can connect it directly to a model and a data lake or warehouse and a cloud provider, and that infrastructure and model layer, do I actually need the software? So when you think about this, how do you think that AI agents and that coming up replaces software, consolidates it? Do we see new unicorns and others not? What is your... And would love to get into your AI agent that you've implemented in just a minute, but just how do you think about that right now, this transition that SaaS is going through and how it evolves in the future?
Yeah. Think of our AI has today we really work with 2 dimensions. If I tell you what's the number one benefit from AI, what would you say?
The fact that I get intelligence, automation, and it can help me understand things that I don't see, don't know, and
okay, that's the
half the time, or actually 1,000th of the time.
Yeah. Well, sorry, say that again. Last one.
No, I was just saying it can do all that in 1/1000th of the time with a whole lot less cost.
Okay, it's 2 things: lower costs and faster.
Yep.
And because it does faster, it can do more.
That's right.
Okay. So today we're really focused on 2 or 3 things, right? In this case, do more, do it at lower costs. When we look at AI, that's how we look at it. And that is our current maturity. Now, I want you to think of rooms that we're in, right? And I think that every room has 2 or 3 doors and connects to another room. And every time you enter a new room, you enter a new world, which opens up new doors. But if you're in the first room that you're in, and you don't know that there's a room behind it because you don't know once you open the door that there's another room. And think of this as the maturity of thinking, right? Every time you enter a new world, new doors that enters you into a new world and new doors and so on and so forth. Today, we are in the world, the first generation of Uber. And in the first generation Uber, we mortals are come to the realization that that there's an opportunity to replace a cab with a human being, right? A random human being that drives a very nice looking car and stuff like that. That becomes Uber. Uber Eats is a next room, but we can't imagine that quite next. We can't, and then the whole thing, personalized delivery and where all that takes us, right? And like, if you today see Uber's delivery model, right? You have like across the world, we're talking about bicycles, motorcycles, like the whole thing. Okay, medicine delivery, specialized. What is it? A friend of mine runs this hop, skip, drive. Joanne, shout out to you, Joanna. Shout out to you. Runs it for like disabled children, right? Like who cannot get into an Uber, right? But imagine all this. These are all rooms beyond the first room. Today in AI, we're in the first room, and in this first room, we are looking at lower costs and the things like, and that is not what it's going to be. Okay, that mindset of where AI will step us in is a place where we start, but it's not where we're going to be 2 to 3 years from now.
That's right.
And so that mindset, where will it take us and what will it do, is the following. Customers want faster. I don't want to sit on a call and have to be scheduled with an SDR and stuff like that, or even a CEO.
No, you don't like filling forms, trying to figure out the calendar, getting asked a bunch of questions with no answers, then getting asked those questions again once you follow. You don't like that's not a great process for you?
So that ain't gonna happen. Second, on average, on an average call and discovery call, 7 questions remain unanswered. Okay,
7? Holy smokes!
It's between 6 to 7 to be accurate, but 6 to 7 questions remain unanswered. That seems odd, right? Like,
yes, it does.
And particularly when it comes down to legal questions, SOC compliance, and whatnot, that can be fixed, right? Okay, so we want accurate information. We want it fast. In other words, when I have the question, I want it, but I want it also. I want it on Saturday night, right? I want it in times, okay. And so you'll see that all that will change. And then, do I care whether it is a human being? I care once I get in the advanced stage. But look, I remember that buying a ticket, I could go back to the proverbial example, buying a ticket needs to be a human being experience, but nowadays those days are over. It doesn't really need to be a human being, right? I'm buying my tickets online and so on. So you see,
even cars, Jacco. You buy cars online now. Think about Teslas or Carvana or all this stuff. And these are not small expenditures. So you're doing that now.
Okay. And so what I'm going to see is I'm going to describe, remember I said earlier, digging a hole, right? Now my son is in construction, and so he works for a company. This company again, I forgot. Construction company, and for that construction company, imagine that you now walk or you drive by some construction somewhere, like traffic construction, call it, and there's an excavator, and there's 4 people standing with their hands next to it, right? And they're looking at it, right? And we all laugh and joke and then say, okay, how many people does it take to dig a hole? But something has changed. And it's what the people do. Previously, those 4 people were with a shovel digging a hole. Now those 4 or 5 people, my son can tell me what those are, right? And McGuire Hester, that's the company he works for, McGuire Hester. And so now those people, there will be an ISHA person. And ISHA stands for safety and health and whatnot or something like that, right? And so there will be a person and they have colors, right? They say, okay, the guy with the blue thing, I don't know, but let's assume that's the person to make sure. Okay, the guy over there with the green thing, that's gas. They're making sure that when they dig, that if they hit a gas line, that's immediate action taken. He has a radio and he can immediately shut down the gas main from remote, right? And so he explains to me what all the people are doing right now. They're no longer digging. They have taken on a different role. That's what will happen with AI. And that's why we say is do not fear AI. If you're an SDR, do it fear an AI. But how many people really wake up and want to be an SDR? So enough. So that's not the problem, right? And those people will find a new job. They already the right ones have already found a job selling their SDR services using AI to do the work for them. So good luck to them, right? So
That's right.
That's the new world. The new world is that lesser things are being done. That also increases the human-led growth motion. And I think we talk a lot today about what the impact of AI-led growth will do. AI-led growth will give the customer more accurate information, more real time, in any point in time, in an immediate response. We'll join the call. There will be meetings a year from now that you and I will have a meeting and we bring in Jack. And Jack will have listened this entire call like a recorded call, but instead Jack can talk, Jack can listen, Jack can make a recommendation and so on and so forth, right? That level of AI will be, we can technically already do it, but it will be more and more acceptable within 12 months that we see it more a lot. Okay, so that will happen, guaranteed, right? You don't need to enter the data any longer in your CRM. That seems to be silly, right? There needs to be some oversight, human in the loop, right? Make sure that if I set $50,000, you don't enter it at $50 million, right? So all that needs to be fixed, but like all that will take place. So then we see all this, and then you come back to what will not change. What will the human being do in this, right? That's that third dimension. That's the room that we are entering. You said it earlier on. There will be a new buying experience. Yep. And then, like forward thinkers saying, do we ever even have a buying experience? Dudskis, I know, and dudettes, I know 5 years from now, buying and selling agent, we think it's new. Folks, in advertisement, buying and selling, this has already been two systems doing this for the past decade. So it's nothing new about this happening. Okay. So, and then we have people think it's consumption-based pricing is going to change everything. I hear you. The world's largest consumption-based pricing model that we have listened to for the past 50 years is a coin-based phone where you put a quarter in. That has been replaced by monthly subscriptions on our mobile phone. That is how bad it worked, right? Well, yes, there will be submodels for which it works, right? Then we have people who say SaaS will die because look, ChatGPT just could do a calculation. I don't need the spreadsheet any longer for it. Yes, I get that too. That will change, of course. Those are all but we will still have a spreadsheet. They will just have integrated AI. We will still have consumption-based. They will just, when it has overages, you're using it so much that you go over it, right? If you have pre-commitments up front, all these things will change. But if one thing we need to do in our world is stop saying SaaS is dead, a subscription is dead. Like you don't know. People don't know how ignorant they are if they say that, not realizing that millions of businesses are simply don't have the AI expertise over the next 5 years to do what needs to be done. And then they're going to get so fatigued sooner or later, dude, can I just have some CRM? And like we said, we're going to go from consumption-based pricing and we're going to have, can I just pay every month and stop worrying about it? Like, you're going to get there. And oh, by the way, the company who invented consumption-based pricing, OpenAI, nowadays, I'm sure that you and I are all paying $20 a month at minimum, right? And so, folks, we don't use the whole story about OpenAI using consumption-based pricing. For the consumer, that is not happening. Why? Because they can make a lot more money by playing off by playing off the average underuse, right? So everybody take a chill pill. That's going to be fine. We're going to be modernized by AI. We're going to have subscription-based and consumption-based pricing. What we will see, this is a trend. Jonathan, this is a trend. We're going to see a change in pricing structure. And the whole idea of setting pricing once a year and holding to that with extreme peaks and valleys, that may change. We may see that websites will dynamically change the pricing based on what you're buying. And I'm not saying by the hour, but I'm saying by the month, we'll see pricing go up and down based on the demand for certain services. So I do see dynamic pricing as a trend, as a relative trend for probably 2026 and 2027, not 2025.
That's very interesting because dynamic pricing has been around for a while too, just not in the industry in the SaaS where we are. And interesting comments. I don't know if you saw this or not, but I think it was Sam Altman actually tweeted out, we're thinking about going to consumption pricing from the $20. Is this good or bad? You would basically give you $20 of credits and it would roll over and then you would pay for more. And I'm pretty sure if there was a roast of him, that would have happened because that's what happened in all of the comments. Someone even said, yeah, you have that already. It's called an API. And so it was interesting. So I agree with you completely, because there's two elements of this. One is, so I'll go from the consumer side and then I'll go from the business side. As a consumer, to your point, how do I know what I'm going to spend? I have no idea. I just want to get on and I want it to solve something for me. It's almost like they make it so difficult, even with the model picker, that I don't know what model. I know what objective I'm trying to achieve, and I just want it to help me achieve that objective. The second thing is, from a business perspective, when you think about budgeting, when you think about usage, when you think about what does this mean, how do you explain that to me? And I'm in the midst of, like, AWS, it's even hard, like for cloud consumption and compute and things of that nature. And so it's just too difficult of a pricing model. So I agree with you. I think there's some sort of hybrid approach. And I think, to your point, it will eventually switch potentially all the way back to monthly, because it's just, you can't budget for it. You don't know what you're going to use. And it's just too difficult for any person to understand overall, even with a calculator. So I completely agree with you on that.
So I think that, like, the world is changing. And as we think this through, I want us to look at the following. We are in this rapid transformation mode, right? And in the past, I called it the sweet spot in the eye of the storm. Is a paper I wrote a few years ago about this very topic. And what it said, once you're in that moment, you don't realize that, right? Like, it's really hard to see how fast the changes are coming. And obviously, we know a little bit today, but compared to how fast things were going in the past, things are going a lot faster. So my point is, like, there's a lot of things changing, right? Like geopolitical, social, economical, technology, right? Technological, everything is changing. We're in the middle of that thing. It's truly what in the past this is known as a form of a renaissance. We truly are in the form of a renaissance where everything is flipped on its head, right? And new things will come and out of that. Now, how do you build a business in a resonance period of time? You don't do that by focusing on all the things that are changing, because you can't actually predict that. What you do is you're focusing on the things that are staying the same, right? Yep. And I think that over the next 2 to 3 years, with all the AI in the world, we know that AI will have a very valuable role to play with an SDR. We know that. That's a given. Okay, good. Done. We know that as a sales engineer, a solution architect, it has a great role to play. Given. Answer questions more accurately, more precisely. We know that it has a great role to play with enablement, helping train salespeople, applying it, co-piloting, all that stuff. Okay, known. Okay. But whether it will be on the call and have coffee with you, no, it won't. I heard this story the other day. It's one of those popular, makes me cry, because, like, I lost my dog. He's standing there. And his Yoshi. And yeah. And so this was an example of what happens to, and I forgot which the brand was. There's a brand, Chewy. Chewy is the food brand. When you send, and you can put Chewy on automatic delivery, right? And so you get every month you get the dog food, that works, right? But then as your dog passes away, you forget to unsubscribe. And what Chewy does is, when you unsubscribe because you lost your dog, then within a few days, you're going to get a bouquet of flowers, say sorry for your loss. Okay. That's an experience.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes,
somebody had to design that experience. Somebody said, this process, when it's due to the loss of a dog, send flowers. That process involved contacting a local flower arrangement, getting done, striking with a nationwide flower delivery company, set that up in a warehouse, right? That's all process. Designed by a human, implemented through process, executed by a system. That's the role that we play. That's the role that you will see us play again and again. Human beings, I don't know if it was you or I was debating with somebody about some AI, and I go, look, that device, right? This is not built for a human. Look at it. It's square. You don't hold it. There's a reason why there's a case behind it, because it is not meant for a human hand, because you drop it, right? Human beings, we're not meant to be typing with 2 thumbs early in the morning on a screen. That's not us. That's only temporary in between. Once we realize, what are we good at? What do we do? And we optimize around that. Every business fixes that. And my point to you in this is as follows. As companies, you want to be successful? Use human beings to design fantastic experiences. Then use AI to apply that correctly, as in the systems, and make sure they execute processes that you can do it and perform it at the lowest and the highest efficiency. It's the lowest cost, highest efficiency. Design the experience. Stop thinking constantly about the sales experience. Start creating a fantastic buying experience, a fantastic user experience, a fantastic impact experience. All that. Do that and you're going to be successful. Whether you use human-led growth, AI-led growth, product-led growth, like all that is secondary. Create a fantastic experience for your buyer, for your user.
Love it. And I think that's a mic drop moment, but I do have one question because I think we want to know. So you have implemented Jack. I think would love to just give a couple minute, how is Jack doing? What are you learning from it? What are the successes that you're seeing? And for those that don't know, Jack is an AI SDR, but I believe you got it doing more than just that. But I would love to give a spill because I think it's really relevant to the conversation we just had.
Yeah, we went with Jack. Jack is a one-mind superhuman that was powered with my visuals reflective of my visuals and powered with the revenue architecture and spiced methodology. And so it allows us to operate Jack as an SDR, but Jack is capable of being a revenue architect. Jack is capable of being a sales expert because he contains all the knowledge that we have. Now, here's where I want you to think about it. When we looked at Jack, first of all, we introduced Jack as a new employee during our monthly employee meetings, right? Or town halls. So we introduced him, this Jack, and we nowadays have 3. We have an inbound, an outbound, and one more. And an enablement, Celeste. Celeste is our enablement. And so we have these AI agents running in the company. If we're a consulting firm, we can't recommend a company to use AI if we don't have it use it ourselves. Many people are recommending it and go, look, fantastic that you know how to write a cool prompt, but then you turn it into a real business, right? Have you clayed literally, physically and mentally and whatnot? Have you clayed yourself, your product AI? Have you made sure that it actually operates? And so we had to do that. Here's what we learned. It is on average 4 minutes. It was on average 4 minutes and 11 seconds. We have been able to increase, for a variety of reasons, to bring that to 6 minutes and 12 seconds. Let me tell you one of the biggest takeaways. 20-80% rule, Pareto principle. You can literally, at the end of every week, we take the top 20 questions, every 2 weeks to be exact. Take the top 20 questions. We verify if Jack answers them correctly. And if not, we improve that. You keep doing that. After a couple of weeks, you have a fantastic AI agent that has a pretty decent answer. You keep improving it, right? You introduce a new product. We had to introduce a new product, and we had to introduce the Impact Summit as the new thing. We uploaded the FAQ in it, and boom, Jack knows that, right? Sherry Johnston, like on Monday morning, goes, it's amazing how quick that went. Imagine you have to do that with a sales force, right? Yeah. Jack operates approximately every 5-minute call, costs us approximately variable cost about 60, 70 cents. At 4 minutes and 11 seconds, I think it costs us 56 cents, and now it costs us 72 cents per 6 minutes and 11 second call. Okay, if you normalize that, that is less than $5,000 a year that we have. Conversion rate between 18 and 19%. It has been dropping. In the beginning. We were more 20, 21%. So we're right now at 18, 19%. And we set up directly, you can, if you give your where you are in the world, you directly get the right person on the phone, right? Think of all that. Soon, Jack will speak the key languages. Brazilian Portuguese, which is one we need. German, one we need. English, not necessarily for the language, but for the cultural impact of the language. And so on and so forth. So like I'm less worried about speaking French, Spanish, and Italian. Those markets are very closed markets historically. So we at Winning by Design don't worry too much about those. But typically any like English-speaking Western world is really China. We have a big operation, and so that also be very beneficial. Multiple languages, overnight.
It's insane, overnight. And going to your point, what would you have to do in the past? You had to hire a bunch of people. So it's just phenomenal to see and hear. And I just want to thank you again, Jacco, for the time. Go ahead. Before you.
I wanted to say, it is not to the benefit of the company. It is to the benefit of the buyer. And that is, I think, a mindset that we often forget. Why? Because you can have a conversation with Jack any point in time, right? And I have to give tribute to the team at OneMind, the way they did that. Now, whenever you have a conversation, go to winningbydesign.com/AI. You get straight there. Have a conversation with Jack. Give him your challenges. You don't have to give your identity if you just want to just call yourself. What is it? I normally call in as Red Bull, right? And, yeah, like it will give. By the way, we have lots of little like treats in there. If you say anything with Red Bull or you make a reference to me, all kind of little stuff. But if you think about it, go to Jack, winningbydesign.com/AI, have a conversation. At the end of the conversation, simply let Jack diagnose you, says, oh, I need to grow from $20 million to $50 million. Help me, right? I got like salespeople, like black to Jack. Tell him what your problem is, right? And at the end, ask for a SPICE summary. Trust me, SPICE summary, SPICED, SPICE summary. Okay. Then walk away from that call and ask yourself, how many SDRs would have been able to do it that accurate, that good?
Better.
That you'll see what we know of today. We know by metrics, Jack is outperforming 70% of the SDRs. 70.
Wow.
Yeah, 67 to be exact. But and it's not 66.6. I'm not saying it was 67.2%. But the reason why we say why it is doing that, because we have access to all the files so we can see what SDRs are entering in their CRM. And if you don't enter it in the CRM and your average lifespan is 9 months and you are selling to customers over multiple years, folks, the data is lost. That means if I don't have the data, the next SDR need to ask the same questions, and the next AE needs to ask the same questions, and the next CSM needs to ask the same question. So, folks, like if you do that at the hospital, do that when you get a new set of tires. Give that. Let's see how you're going to respond emotionally after that. Bring you a baby, and then your baby is sick or something like that, and then have 3 different people ask the same thing and try to tap blood, which happened to my son. 3 times they tap blood out of it, and you're going to go, dude, this ain't happening.
That's right.
We do that every day nowadays. And that is, and we say, oh, we need to get back to growth. Folks, fix that and growth will fix itself. Okay. Like you're running such anyway, all that will help, and AI can help us with that.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. What an amazing episode. I appreciate your time and such impactful stuff. And AI, not only flipping go to market, but I think important thing, flipping the buyer experience and us focusing more on experiences. So again, Jacco, thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful episode. Appreciate you as always. Cheers, everybody.
Okay. Thank you for all the listeners. It was a pleasure and it was my treat. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.